morning, everyone, and actually, good afternoon, your time. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm so delighted to be here with you guys today. You can ask me questions anytime. It actually helps because this is a fairly, the way we've conceptualized this work is it's fairly technical problem, but we are trying to solve something which I think is a very large societal problem. So it's our one small attempt at kind of addressing something much larger. So there will be lots of interesting, I think, connections to technology policy, content moderation, platform governance, just responsible use of AI. There's a lot of sort of offshoots, and it would be nice to have that discussion going. So let me begin without further ado. So, what was motivation for us? Why did we start looking at this problem? Many, many years ago, me and one of the collaborators on this project, when we got together, at that time I was already doing research on using data from YouTube. And I have a paper which is, I think, more than 12 years back, published in ISR. We looked at the diffusion of information on YouTube, and that uses a network theoretic approach, but builds some measures and looks at this kind of diffusion from like a BAS model, but augmented BAS model, and so forth. And it's really social media platforms were just, all of us were interested in those days. We thought social media is a force for good. Many years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, we didn't really think of the dark side of social media. So at that point we started thinking, can we use, there's just so much content out there on YouTube. It's very eye-opening. There was just so much health related information. If you go to YouTube and you're just looking up diabetes related information, you will get people posting content. Will not just be doctors and hospitals, but you will have information from nutritionists, from dietetics professionals, from physical fitness trainers. So there's all kinds of personalized. Of course, there's a lot of junk information as well. We know that there's misinformation is rampant and fake. There are people who are just blatantly promoting things. All kinds of stuff is there. But what we felt was, can we just use the YouTube as a kind of digital therapeutic? Meaning that most of us, when you go to the doctor's office for any condition, doctor will give you 2 pages of notes, which maybe most of us won't even. Health literacy is a huge problem in today's world. In the United States, it's estimated that only, I think, 12% of adults have enough health literacy to comprehend and manage their own care. So, given these challenges, videos, if they're well made videos on every condition, contextualized to your personalized care needs, can I build an automated solution which will create like a Netflix for health videos, right? I can curate it. And of course, the problem that I'm looking, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack, but we have very powerful machine learning methods. So that was our motivation, right? Can we just kind of help a clinician? When you go to a doctor, doctor will say, go watch these 2 videos. So there's enormous potential. We can develop an automated solution to evaluate, can we put a sort of a tick mark next to it from health literacy and patient self-care perspective? This would be considered good educational material, right? That was kind of our deliver this video as a prescriptive. And so this is a huge problem, obviously. There's like all the UN SDGs, uh, and digital literacy and access. There's just so many challenges, I guess, in terms of healthcare, pre-existing divides on health literacy, and whole host of sort of problems. But in the United States, in the previous administration, of course, now that we have a new president, it's a different new day. But previously, I think Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General, used to issue all the call to action especially directed at social media companies, saying, you know, social media companies also have an enormous responsibility towards the public, because in today's world, we just go to social media for everything. We folks get everything from financial advice to healthcare advice to lifestyle choices. So they've become kind of the curators and aggregators and infomediaries. But then we are, in the situation where there's kind of a perfect storm where you have chronic diseases, public health failures, pre-existing health literacy disparities, and then vast amounts of user-generated content on all these platforms. People are using and interacting with them. And we don't really have any appropriate guardrails or content moderation policies. In fact, following the debate, both X and Meta now have announced that they're rolling back a lot of those content moderation policies. So, what does that mean for us, from either public health or chronic disease perspective? So, one of the things that happened in the US, very positive development, I thought, was that YouTube actually convened a group of experts, um, which is basically about to identify credible sources of health information on social media. What are some principles and attributes? And one of the collaborators on this project is actually in that committee as well. So it's, given us, I think I should go back and show. This is a collaboration between several folks. Rema Padman, who's at Carnegie Mellon, she is, on that the the National Academy of Medicine convened expert advisory group. So, in a sense, we are, some very small part. I think we've been able to develop some of our work probably has some meaning in terms of informing the larger public debate about how platforms need to create these standards around what health information, what health principles are considered credible. So we are happy about very indirectly our role. Right. So how do we assess? What's the quality of medical information encoded on these videos? How do we rate if a clinician has to use it? There are guidelines developed by AHRQ, the American Health Research Institute. So how do we? They say that it has to be able, it has to be actionable. Is this even representative from a demographic diversity perspective? Because, if a user is going to YouTube and sees someone talking about the top videos are all about diabetes, but they don't represent me and my demographic group, maybe they will just switch off and not follow, not keep scrolling, right? So we have a lot of guidelines which we've tried to operate and so forth. And as I said, the starting one of the papers was published in MIS Quarterly, and some we've had conferences like ICIS. We have a whole list of publications in this domain. Most recently, we got paper in it just a preprint, just got accepted in JMIR, Journal of Medical Internet Research. It's a very premier journal in healthcare informatics. So this has basically been multiple fields we've tried to healthcare informatics, uh, some in AI and computer science. So we've gone to some computer science conferences as well to present pieces of this work. And of course, our IS core audience has always been IS. That's our disciplinary training for us. And then there's Journal of Biomedical Informatics. We had a paper published a little earlier this year. That's about inclusion and representativeness on these platforms and so forth. So again, we've gone to some more medical informatics conferences. Can we just evaluate a pipeline end to end? So, and the most recent ICIS was how do we classify actionable information? We use some methods in machine learning called transformer and attention models. So we have to evaluate the synthesis of audio and video. So that's called, we have something called cross attention that computes that score. So various approaches. This is only a subset of the vast amount of papers we've kind of published in this domain. And it's a very huge project and it's still ongoing. So, like I said, the National Academy of Medicine in the United States has recognized this problem. World Health Organization of which unfortunately we no longer are part of the United States. But they also have recognized these are all big problems for societies. So let's start with our basics. So obviously, what we're trying to do is combine three different things. One is a social science-based causal approach, causal inference. One is basically a very technical, let's assess these videos from some algorithmic perspective. Build some algorithm to classify video does X, video does not do X, right? And of course, I would say the third is also uh, we need a guidelines, and from a theory perspective, theoretically, how do we assess this kind of health information? So the theories we've all built are from the health informatics area, medical informatics area. And the reason being, they are the ones who are most engaged. There's a huge body of practice in that area that assesses content quality suitable from a health literacy and health education perspective. So these are three different theoretical domains, so to speak, three different approaches that we've tried to combine in our work. So let me start with, this is our machine learning pipeline. How do we build a repository of videos? So we started with one chronic condition, diabetes. And the reason is that diabetes is one of the most prevalent chronic conditions. In the United States, I think almost 1/3 of adults are considered either like they're pre-diabetic or there's some sort of prone to diabetes, because let's face it, our lifestyles are very sedentary, and our dietary habits also, there's a lot of contributing factors world over. Countries like India as well are seeing lots of rates of diabetes increase, and this is one area where chronic self-care is very important. Your ability to self-manage your condition, chronically manage what you eat, how you exercise, how you manage your daily life, those things are extremely important. So this is where your doctors and healthcare establishment doesn't have the time and effort to make personalized videos to help you. Maybe YouTube can be that low cost. Lots of people have already posted videos on YouTube. If you can just find it, and your doctor can just put it for you in some repository, and you can just watch it, this is a low cost, scalable health education delivery mechanism. So my hope is that my approach can help find those videos, right? So we went to a, a forum called Daily Strength. That's where a lot of folks with diabetes discuss question and answers. So we used that, and we had some physicians help us. We created a set of queries. So what are keywords? Let's say we have some 200 keywords. We need all the keywords. We need the popular keywords. We need those long tail queries as well, because we are trying to assess as comprehensively as possible the health information needs of individuals. So we have these 200 keywords, and for each of them we retrieve like the top 200 videos that YouTube. So basically, I mean, we didn't do 400,000 videos. We had a starting corpus of something like 10,000 videos, right? So what else do we do? We use Google Cloud and storage platform for all this data pre-processing. And for each video, we can retrieve two things. So we can get the video itself, and then we can get what is called the metadata on the video. What's the metadata? It'll have all the video description, it'll have all the engagement, the likes, the comments. I would say, I guess, even basic the viewership of the videos, right? All those like things are there in the metadata. So then what we have is we used a Qualtrics-based annotation. We recruited physicians and diabetes educators to assess a subset of the videos. We can create our ground truth, so to speak, right? And for each of these, we have to be very rigorous in the way we annotate. We need to use the kappa score. So if there are two, every video is watched by at least two individuals. If there's disagreement, we'll bring in a third person. and they can resolve the inconsistencies. So we followed all the standard rigorous procedures, right? And then can we do we have all these other standards which I will get into, and we need a platform for data analysis and visualization, and that helps us. We implemented some parts of the solution with various hospitals, with University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. We had collaboration with the otorhinolaryngology practice at Brigham and Women, which is the teaching hospital associated with Harvard Medical School. So we have a bunch of such collaborations with various medical healthcare providers and so forth. So this is kind of how we went about it. So very first step, how do we assess if there's any medical content in videos? Now, there can be medical terms and people can still be misinforming. That's kind of beyond our scope for now for this problem. We just want to measure if a video even contains any medical information or not. How do we measure that? So, the National Library of Medicine has developed a syntax called UMLS, Unified Medical Language System, which is a dictionary based approach. So, what does the dictionary do? According to UMLS syntax, we can say medical information is basically, we can treat it as medical entities and semantic relations between the medical entities. So basically, it would be something like any relation is uh, this drug treats something, this is, prevents something, X can be used to diagnose something, and so on. So all I'm doing is a very simple what's called named entity recognition. Can I just count all the medical entities, right? For that, we used at that time, this is already some 5 years back, we started this work. We used what was called a bidirectional long short term memory. It's a deep learning method. So we start with this trained annotated corpus, and we have basically all these medical terms, disease, symptom, condition, and so forth. And what is interesting is the bidirectional long short term memory. This is basically video metadata from the video description. That itself is a very rich source for me to train my BioLSTM model. In today's world, I think you can use BERT, which is like a pre-trained corpus, and it's a transformer-based approach. BERT can be used with some fine-tuning, or you can use extensions of BERT called BioBERT, MedBERT. We've done a bit of, in recent work, we've looked at some extensions, but I think our method was what we built many years ago still is better than the fine-tuned BERT. So I haven't gone much into, and I'm just preempting any questions from the audience by talking about BERT, right? So, of course, what is it that we have to watch out for? There can be, there's a consumer health vocabulary. That's another um, standard that exists in the United States. So that's there's we have to evaluate our approach against alternate approaches. This is a standard in machine learning. So there's something called conditional random fields, which is a Markovian based approach. So the BioLSTM was doing better than dictionary based approaches and conditional random fields and alternate methodology. And the reason for that, as you can see, is it was better, the BioLSTM was better at training itself, recognizing medical terms, because it's a very powerful architecture, even for non-standard kind of terminology. What are the problems though? Problems are what is called the, how do you put the boundaries around the boxes? Do you recognize the full phrase? And some of these required some additional work. We have to do error analysis, and this turns out to be one of the detailed parts where we have to go and say, are we misclassifying some phrase? Can we do some error analysis? Can we break down a little bit further? And what do we do? And so forth. So the precision recall, all fantastic performance, basically. This method is like really, really good at recognizing all these medical terms in videos, right? And since we are comparing with UMLS, it's less likely that anyone, putting actual medical terms is really misinforming the public, right? That's kind of one way of looking at it, right? But then what is the reality? Let's look at the videos that are just a sort of model-free evidence. Videos that are popular, videos that are not popular. When the medical information in video is very low, according to my method, videos are getting high views. When there's a lot of medical information in video, what happens? Nobody's watching the videos, so they're definitely less popular. I guess that's a familiar thing for a lot of professors. We can understand why this is happening. And unfortunately, that platforms only prioritize engagement, especially platforms like TikTok, even more so. So it's not a very happy picture, not happy state of affairs and all. But this is one of the things we find. So I've written about this for just about. I've done some sort of public commentary as well. So this could be very bad from a public health perspective because it's prioritizing things that are engaging when there have to be some sort of medical qualifiers or some, it has to come with some sort of warning notice, right? So this is the first step. We started by classifying videos on the dimension of how medically informative they are. Next is, can we assess how understandable videos are from a health literacy perspective? How do we do that? For this, again, we need to look at both theories as well as frameworks. But where? Where do we find these theories and frameworks? Um, Not in IS because this is not really it's kind of outside most of the IS scope. We have a lot of theories of engagement with information systems, but would not really address the specific case of health literacy. What are patients looking for? So we looked at, again, the medical informatics field, and the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality proposed what is called this PMAT, Patient Education and Management Materials, Patient Education Materials Assessment Tool. So PMAT basically evaluates and compares patient education for written, audio, and video formats, right? And basically, PMAT says that a video is understandable when consumers of diverse backgrounds and varying levels of health literacy can process and explain the key messages, right? So when is it understandable? PMAT guidelines provide some way to do so. So what do? We just kind of quickly looked at how people have done studies on PMAT is considered valid, and folks have done studies on YouTube. Once again, what's the problem? Very small sample sizes. They don't have our algorithms. So we decided, can we conceptualize, take this PMAT and build an algorithm that sort of quantifies the PMAT logic algorithmically and just can give a tick mark next to a video. This is understandable video. This is not an understandable video. What is the challenge? Well, to do this algorithmically, the number one problem is that you don't have a lot of training data. Remember, all these models are ultimately some version of what are called supervised models, supervised learning. So we need some training data and we need the ability to learn from the training data. And of course, these deep learning algorithms that are employed by the Googles of the world or Metas of the world are powerful, but they also have enormous training, large data sets. So they can learn efficiently, maybe with smaller sample sizes, but they're also learning with millions and millions of observations and very fancy computing power. I don't have that either, right? I have to work with the constraints of whatever. We have high performance computing clusters in our universities, which we used, but within whatever is allowed as a researcher, one or two researchers working together, how can we kind of overcome? And where do we get our data annotated by? So I'll explain all these things. So we hit upon the idea of using a method called co-training. Co-training is basically called a multi-view learning. So what we do is we have video metadata and we have the videos itself. So we've extracted features from the metadata, we've extracted features from the video. This is like two different views of the data. So intuitively, our co-training method is running two classifiers in parallel and classifying videos. And if these classifications are in agreement, then we can proceed. If it's not, We use a human in the loop AI, where a human being can help train the algorithm. So that's our basically how we implement it. We have, this is our data pipeline. We have all these health related, um, we have metadata, we have the video level, we did object detection, shot detection, scene change detection, and then we can do text analysis, right? We can do readability of the text, we can do syntactic analysis, we can recognize the medical entities, we can do semantic analysis, right? So we have basically features from all these different views, video content view and the metadata view, and then we run our co-training algorithm. And then we can do comparison with all these gold standard benchmarks and so forth, right? So how do we annotate videos? We have to find annotators who have some background in patient education, so diabetes educators. And then we um, basically got final round of annotation is, will you recommend this video for patient education purpose? That's the gold standard which we have to measure our approach. So my video, my method versus what the physician's recommended method would be. Can I assess my so this is kind of how the understandability is working. Two levels, two different classifiers running in parallel is what we are kind of doing, right? So essentially, the approach, the algorithmic approach is a bit like when you have the first classifier predicts, we also have what is called a confidence score. It's predicting with high confidence. So, two confident agreement from two classifiers, and we have a confident prediction. But if there's a difference in the confidence score, that is when we need an expert to intervene and assess, right? And there's all these methods are very I mean, there's just so many different ways of implementing all these methods. This is one way. Sometimes when we present in a more technical audience, the question we face is this, is there a different way of doing a human in the loop training? Of course, there's a lot of different approaches out there. This is what we hit upon to overcome the challenge that we don't have enough training data, and that this is not a very easy classification problem. I cannot recruit folks on, using Amazon Mechanical Turk or Prolific or some crowdsourcing platform. So this video is understandable from patient education perspective, yes or no. They cannot do that, right? I actually need very clear evidence-based guidelines developed by the domain experts, and it has to be expert annotated with some expertise. It cannot be annotated by someone outside that domain, right? So I think I didn't really present the PMAT scales, but there are so many different items. It's like I can always share the paper if anyone's interested. Its preprint is available on the JMIR website. It's embargoed for a bit because that's how their processes work, but it should be even publicly available very soon. Otherwise, I'm happy to share a copy. Just do feel free to reach out to me. So the PMAT annotation, how it works is that we are the material has to be understandable when it's breaking down something into different steps, when kind of the purpose is clear, when it specifies, there's just a lot of detail in the PMAT guidelines. So we took each of those scores and then we annotated the videos were annotated for each of those, the sub sections or subtasks within PMAT. So that's how detailed our annotation process is. And I think this is why, we are happy that it got accepted in a health informatics journal, because our approach has to be, we are borrowing from that literature. So we are happy that people in that field can see that, we are kind of contributing back to the domain that we kind of built on. And so I think in future work, maybe we have a lot of open-ended questions, and maybe those would be also, some of them will be targeted at the IS audience, and some we want to keep these bridges with the different communities, right? So the performance, we have to do a lot of performance comparisons. And, how is the predictive accuracy of the model? In short, the co-training, combining these two classifiers is outperforming any one classification accuracy. So that's a good kind of hygiene check, right, on our approach, right? And this is another important thing for us because we employed this method because it's kind of hard to categorize problem. It's not very easy to, I cannot recruit some folks on, like I said, on Amazon Mechanical Turk, and they will give annotations. So how is my error rate? Is it declining after I have enough training labels? So that's a very important measure for us. And sure enough, these are some performance comparisons. So we need some training data, but it's not like you need 10,000 training labels as well. It's fairly efficient at learning after a certain threshold. So that's a very good sort of thing for us to note. And then how many expert interventions do we need by this confidence label? Because we need, when the two classifiers are inconsistent, we need an expert intervention. So what's the way to do it? And again, beyond this particular problem alone, uh, which is very health literacy, I feel that this approach itself could be interesting for a variety of these human algorithm connection problems that we are increasingly studying in business schools. Because in a variety of cases, you may be using an algorithmic approach to measure something, but what is the right way to develop that algorithm? Where do you get the experts to build the training data? And what's that combination of human and algorithmic interface? How do you kind of intervene to tweak the algorithm, as it were? I think these questions will assume a lot of prominence in the years to come as we work with larger data sets, and we are working on these kind of amorphous problems that require both, right, human intelligence and kind of AI intelligence. So, that's kind of how I see it in terms of bigger picture direction, generalizing beyond just the context of the study alone. So, like I said, there is a gold standard, which is medical experts are saying will they recommend this video or not. So I can do a measure from information retrieval called precision at k. And what does precision at k do? It basically tells us um, how good is this measure kind of after a certain number of iterations. So what is happening really is that after a certain number of training labels, my method is actually doing better than if just an expert told you versus this algorithm is predicting. Algorithm is actually doing well. Simple reason is because it has already a lot of experts involved in two levels. The experts were involved in annotating the initial data, and the experts were also involved in tweaking or kind of that it's a human in the loop guided by human intervention. So that's why it's kind of outperforming after a certain number of training labels or after a certain amount of data. It can outperform just the physician's input alone, right? So again, we looked at, we re-ranked all the search results from YouTube and try to establish validity of our approach and so forth, right? So this is one other problem. Then we looked at a different problem, which is assessing representativeness. How representative? So there's a lot of interest in today's world about are online platforms replicating some of these inequities that we see in the real world, right? So is there some kind of bias or discriminatory data? They are sampling biases, or are they kind of application injustices, right? Or you know where there's some pre-existing biases in society, and are they getting sort of replicated in the way that the algorithmic filter bubble sort of works, or filters work in online media? So how do we address that problem? So we try to see, is there, can we kind of quantify what kind of videos are getting popular on YouTube? Is there some demographic disparity that we can quantify? How do we assess that? So what we try to do is, first we have this whole YouTube pipeline, right? And then what we did was we for some set of videos we annotated the gender of the presenter, the race. We did our manual labels, and then we also went to we looked at popular face detection algorithms, face match, face lab, etc. And we got the labels from there as well, right? So we have basically two sets of way to label, right? So we can also look at, we also do audio detection, not just video level. Audio detection, can we use voice recognition methods and detect the audio of the speaker, right? Because some video can just have some anime, but it'll talk about healthcare. So I can use gender detection of the audio as well, right? And then we have all this facial recognition, right? And we can, we can classify the videos too. And what else we tried to do is we did that when the face is visible, we did a very quick checks. The views do not differ significantly between male and female presenters. But when it's not visible, sometimes the invisible ones, there seems to be some kind of bias. Popularity is skewed more towards male voices and so forth, right? Uh, the average daily views are higher for male presenters, and as a general rule, for more white presenters and so forth. And we have a full paper on this. And I didn't want to go into a lot of details because there we have to also use methods from algorithmic fairness, and we have to establish what is called a disparate treatment or disparate impact. Is there some significant differences between these popularity biases? For turns out there is a slide, and I didn't know how much time I'll have to go into each study, so I didn't put too many slides on that for this talk. But I'll just quickly mention that there is this concept of intersectional disparities, or when we talk about the is there kind of a popularity bias specifically for these intersectional categories, like women who happen to be from a minority racial category? And we do find that, by and large, algorithm doesn't appear because we are looking at healthcare videos. It doesn't seem to be significant biases, but we established that there are some intersectional disparities. And that's the paper that's already been published online, and you can freely access in Journal of Biomedical Informatics for any interested folks to look at. And I think this may be a very prevalent issue in a lot of online settings. We see some studies in IS too studying these kinds of issues, but to my knowledge, folks have not looked at all these intersectional disparities, which would be very interesting to examine from a societal perspective and from a disciplinary perspective, what they mean for the organization of information. And it's essentially what gets kind of promoted on which platform, what is seen as the dominant kind of standard. And there's maybe a lot of interesting qualitative studies that can be done as well. And I'm just kind of, again, thinking through all the possibilities. It's just a lot of things that one can research on. For those of us in the IS community, it must be really interesting, right? The last thing I'll talk about is how to assess actionable information in videos using all these latest and greatest, like transformer-based methods from computer science. And I know this is getting very, very technical, but I think just some of these details may still be interesting for general audience, right? So why is this important? Take something like TikTok. It's enormously popular. What is the reason for the appeal? Well, TikTok algorithm prioritizes engagement. I teach one whole class. I teach a class on user-generated content analytics, and one class is just spent on the TikTok algorithm. So, what is engaging about, particular like thing? That's where we started with. We looked at a very specific subset of how-to videos, even within our diabetes context. Let's focus our attention on these kind of how-to videos, right? So, for example, let's say there is something called how to lose weight. There are two different videos, right? Which of these is more actionable compared to other videos? what are the standards to assess actionability, right? Because more actionable also sometimes is more engaging in online context, right? So what should we, how do we, actionable guidance is like, just stop telling me what it is, tell me what to do, right? So the again PMAT, which we go back, it addresses the domains of understandability and actionability of health information, right? So there's like video classifiers, but those are about like a machine vision, recognizing what actions people take. It's not about this. Our approach is more from a language perspective. How is it more actionable? And as it turns out, I can tell you the surprise part right now. It's not maybe much of a surprise. The natural language part was more informative to assessing the actionability of a video rather than the video content. Video content didn't actually matter as much. It's the narrative, the story, I think that mattered more, which is not surprising because we're looking at health videos. We're looking at, oh, how to make you thin or how to make you lose weight in 30 days or 10 days. How does that video go popular? Well, you have to tell the good story and you have to break it into steps. That's what my research would suggest, right? So we got these transformer-based methods, pre-trained classifiers, and we combined some pre-trained large classifiers and built our own classifier using the pre-existing methods. So there is something called vision transformer, which basically um, can be used to classify large amounts of data. So we took videos and extracted frames, basically images from the videos. So it's every video is collection of frames. So we can classify images, right? And then what do? We have text classifier. We used all these BERT pre-trained models, right? And then we look at what is called a cross attention mechanism. That's a score that basically looks at the combination of video and text, this kind of synthesis of video and text. How much is that, this attention score? We can see how much it matters to video popularity. Therefore, we can say that what am I doing? Combining these deep learning methods and transformer based methods to create like a way of classifying a video from my patient education guideline perspective. Is this compelling, right? That's what the cross attention score will capture. And then we can see if does that matter to engagement on the video. I can tell you the answer, yes, it matters, right? So basically we have all these actionable videos. Material has to break down action into manageable steps. It has to address the video. It says you do this, you take the step, fall. Here is my magic diet, and it's going to make you rich and famous and thin in like just 5 days, right? And how do I get million, I guess, followers on TikTok or YouTube Shorts? By telling them you do this. Give them 5 easy steps. Give at least one action patients can, person can take. Do this in the morning. Do this tomorrow morning, etc., etc. And it tells you some how to use some chart and table. Here, by the way, measure this using whatever chart or table. Put this in this table, and then you will see the weight loss results. So I just told you this magic formula on how you can get millions of views on YouTube. Please try it at your own risk. And if you do manage to become a YouTube influencer and make a lot of money, don't forget to write me a small check for all the steps I've just told you. But that's kind of how it's working. And what we've tried to do is find a very rigorous way of getting all these annotations, like I explained in detail, get some experts to annotate our videos, um, take this insight and build algorithmic classifiers using a lot of state-of-the-art sort of methods from computer science and machine learning methods. We also used computer vision methods from computer vision to recognize things in audios and then to recognize the video level elements, right? And of course, we also measure the how many discrete seen changes, short changes are there, and so forth, right? So this is kind of our data, right? So we look at the sequences essentially, and we can manually annotate. So this is kind of a little bit of how our framework looks like. I'm not going into I'm not going into all the details. And this is under review actually we're revising it for Inform's Journal of Computing, which is kind of technical journal, but it's also focused within business schools. I think a lot of folks publish within that. So again, different, this series of work that we've been doing on this area. So we have a number of cross attention. What happens when you combine single instance of videos too? We have to do a lot of cross checks and comparisons and so forth, right? So I'll just skip some of the technical details. And as I said, basically what happens, uh, can we look at the video description, from the transcript of the videos? What happens if I take a sentence level? Or what happens if I break it into what are called the CLS tokens? Is there a difference between how I can perceive the actionability? Turns out those things matter as well, right? So, like I said, I gave you the primary intuition of our method, which is that it has to be directly addressing the user. It has to break discrete steps. It has to show certain sequences. It has to say, does this we're also measuring if I'm using charts and objects and other stuff. And my math basically, um, you know as I've explained at the start of the talk, if I have to recruit doctors to watch videos, they can watch maybe 20 videos. But this approaches algorithmically are scalable to tens of thousands. And if I had computing capacity and more money, it would be scalable for hundreds and thousands of videos, right? So that's kind of the beauty of this method, to build the right kind of algorithms that can take this insight from experts and kind of make it more scalable at a platform level, right? And I think that's kind of where we are at this point. And I've done a lot of like sort of writing for the general public, because what I've learned from my own work concerns me a lot about how, none of these issues are even considered important from a platform governance perspective. And I see that some of these are also, it's a question of sort of brand safety and trust and all these larger issues. Because, what's getting prioritized, what is the information we see? It's not according to any known standards. So where is that kind of checks and balances? And I sort of also study responsible use of AI. So this is kind of a way all my different interests are merging. So I'll kind of stop here and see if there are questions.
I'm going to kick it off with a very, very basic one. I mean, you showed us a whole body of research that you've done, and various papers have come out of it. But I was wondering, in the YouTube videos, how long did it take you to? I mean, your work is so amazingly rigorous. I mean, how long should we all plan in order to get one paper out from a study of that kind?
I think now with the new methods like the BERT types of models, classifying the videos on one dimension should not take that much time, right? For this work, we were funded by NIH, National Institute of Health. So
Mhm,
once we had one paper, then a lot of subsequent papers came out of that.
mhm,
But if you don't have NIH fund, you want to just do like a paper by paper,
mhm,
then I think one way is to familiarize yourself with some of the pre-existing classifiers. A bit of algorithmic, familiarity will be helpful. What are libraries that are already out there? Can you use them to kind of, start with small annotated subset of data, and then it's a matter of some months. You should be able to at least do b- some analysis, right? So it can be maybe constructs that are more familiar to IS audiences,
Mhm,
like usefulness or ease of use.
mhm.
Those annotations should be more straight. You could do it and recruit some, maybe some students to help you with your annotations.
Thank you. Seriously, it's such amazing, rigorous work.
Thank you.
I think there is a question in the chat from Asim.
Uh-huh.
Asim, would you like to just speak up and
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, hi. I thank you for the amazing talk. My question is more for qualitative researchers, given your expertise in BERT and BioLSTMs and now LLMs. If
Mhm.
we were to use LLMs, say, for qualitative research in terms of coding and all, what might be the right approach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that, one of the things that happens with these large language models, right? You can get very useful feedback, but sometimes you have to, you LLM output requires a level of auditing, right? You can't just use it as is without any kind of checks and balance. So what is the right way to audit it? In the industry, standard would be to use what's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation, but that is a would require a lot more data and lot more resource than maybe an individual researcher, right? So at the very minimum, one of the things you would want to do is compare across different LLMs. So maybe ChatGPT, but also Claude and Anthropic and such. And the can you just do AI generated responses across various iterations? And then can we just sort of understand something of contextuality, right? Or can we do something like the inter-rater reliability type with the AI generated? Can you get some expert to quickly look at the AI generated things and then, give some rating? I think with those guardrails, then we can definitely use LLM output, right? And that's kind of been my approach here as well. Everything we used an inter-rater reliability type of. So you can definitely do LLM output with those checks and balances in place. That's my answer.
Thank you for that. A question to Maha. Maha, will you accept inter-rater reliability between Claude and say OpenAI? What's the point there? Just a fun comment, nothing serious. Thank you for organizing and thank you, Anjana, for giving the talk.
thanks, Asim, for showing up. Thank you very much for participating. I think Jonathan has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Anjana. This is, I mean, really extensive and interesting deep dive into how you've done all this. Um, I'm not familiar with the PMAT instrument. And so one, can you give us kind of an intuitive explanation of what it looks
Mhm,
for and what it weights and all that sort of stuff?
mhm,
And then secondly, you may have explained this, but at the beginning you said were you worried about the quality of the videos, but
mhm,
then when I saw later in the presentation, you were talking about just understanding. And how did you partition those two things? Was it just because you had the panel of doctors evaluating quality and then you said they did it? Or, because I'm running through my mind, I'm thinking, well, in the case of diabetes, walk an hour every day will reduce your probability of getting diabetes. That's probably mostly correct. But I could also say, smoking speeds up your metabolism, which reduces your probability of getting diabetes. But is that quality of, so how do you partition these sort of things, right?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think the PMAT, yeah, I should have maybe gone a little more deep dive into PMAT. But PMAT is based on I think the PMAT understandability guideline is if PMAT says that sort of something is understandable, then it's okay. Okay, I'm just trying to say it's basically can the it's about what is PMAT doing is combining a set of things that contribute to how people comprehend health information. So the understandability, when PMAT says, according to the PMAT guideline, if I'm sorry, patient education material is classified as understandable, right? According to the guideline, it is based, like I said, the consumers of diverse backgrounds and varying levels of health literacy can process and explain the key material. So understandability is that, does it make its purpose evident to the patient, right? Does it use everyday language? And medical terms are only to familiarize the reader. Does it ask the use some numbers, or does it use some visuals? Is the material, is it breaking it down into short sections? Does it have, if it's written material, it'll ask you like clear header, sequence is logical. Is there a layout? Is there a use of visual aid? All these are things that PMAT will ask. What did we do from an algorithmic perspective? We interpreted the PMAT and we sort of said, here we have the entire the narrative of the video, so we can do the readability, we can do all these things that PMAT is asking in qualitative terms, we can quantify that. Similarly, we can take the video, break it into frames. So we can do, the images can tell us if there is clear scene changes or there is short change. So we can also quantify all that insight using our own methods. Does that make sense? So that is
Yeah,
how we were
absolutely.
able to do, right? That's the first part of your question. Second part is the quality of information. So we haven't really published this work, but if we did the subsample, I can tell you one thing. Um, I'm getting a, okay, sorry. There was like suddenly a sort of echo, so it confused me. Um, the videos that are most popular are very low in medical information and very high in understandability, right? So there's understandable without any medical information. So that's a little bit like your diabetes, question. You can give very clear medical terms for managing diabetes, or you can tell something which is very clear to a patient and has absolutely nothing at all rooted in medical knowledge. So I think just my method will just provide us a way to distinguish between these effects, right? The implementation, how platforms act on it, or how doctors, that's kind of beyond beyond my scope, but I can tell you this much, right? So these are two different things. The information quality captured through health, the I would say, how are we measuring this sort of uh, the amount of medical terms or medical knowledge quantified in the video, right? Like codified medical knowledge. That is kind of a information quality measure. The engagement, comprehensibility, it's completely different dimension. Now, the best practice would be to have both very clearly, right? But that's the trade-off. And I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think Shubhobrata has a question as well. Could you unmute?
Right, I'm sorry, I was starting to speak without unmuting. Thanks, Maha. Anjana, thank you so much for this, very insightful talk. Like last time I remembered, I saw your talk at Informs or AOM. I don't remember in person. It was also really wonderful that time.
Thank
So,
you.
so my question is like when I'm listening to your talk, what pops up in my mind is a very similar example of financial literacy videos. There are so many people doing videos on making people more aware about finance, how to manage their finances. And there is also a lot of misinformation. Like people are promoting stocks, people are being doing sponsored reels or videos like promoting stocks. It's like saying people, okay, you buy this stock, the
Mhm.
stock price will rise and you will immediately gain a lot of money. So there is a lot of misinformation, so much so that the Securities and Exchange Board of India has now issued some guidelines on financial literacy videos on what can be said and what cannot be said in those videos. Very similar to what you're doing. So I
Yeah.
was thinking, does the results of your, the insights that you get from this, videos in one domain on
Mhm.
medical literacy in a sense, do they
Mhm.
translate to, can we translate those insights to other areas?
Absolutely. It's just that, for me, I'm sort of now anchored in this domain and it's not, I don't see this as study that I can do, but I would encourage everyone to study this. In fact, it's not just financial literacy. It would be like all these wellness and stuff. And I think there's like people who call themselves finfluencers.
Yeah,
They're like financial influencers. So
yeah,
I guess, I'm officially a very old person. I belong to a generation where we've invested our money, like put our money in our, retirement account or something like that. So young people probably don't do any of those things. They go to YouTube or they
yeah,
go to Instagram or TikTok and somebody tells them how to invest their money. So there's
right,
like meme stocks, there crypto, um, and the same studies can be done. You can use BERT methods, you can use some kind of these vision transformers, etc. You can recruit maybe a finance, or you can use large language models. There's FinBERT, right? So just extract like amount of, financial terms that are being used. When I went to business school, which is many years ago, so I don't know what business schools are teaching nowadays because world seems so different. Maybe they're teaching the same things. They taught us all these, net present value and ROI and financial statement, reading financial statements, and there are all these measures. Are any of the influencers even talking about? I don't think they are. So how do they value companies? Based on vibes, I
right.
guess. So, but vibes are very powerful because stocks are moving based on those vibes. So it's really people like me who are very old fashioned and right. So I think absolutely finance, all these meme stock, crypto, you can use these methods. Maybe don't even need to use it with, we don't need this much domain knowledge. Because if it's anything health related, then we need to use very rigorous health literacy standards, right? So you should be able to do that using Finbert and some of those methods, right? But again, I don't know what's the publication process wise, though. I'm not sure if our journals and folks in our community have understood how much world has changed. Because sometimes we'll have all these questions about what is the relevance of this research,
Hmm.
right? It is very relevant because millions of people are using these platforms and at a much larger level than we can even comprehend, right? And as a part of everyday life, right? And so that's the disconnect sometimes, in my opinion, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shubharat. I think Bogdan has a question.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very informative, and thank you, Maha, to opening this up to non-Esade people. I have, I think, two questions, and the first one relates to an earlier one about the use of LLMs for qualitative research. Um, it's actually a question that I'm struggling with for one of my papers right now.
Mhm.
And the message that came across is to maybe compare the output from different LLMs, like across LLMs to one another to see if
Yes.
it kind of corresponds or if it differs, to what extent it differs.
Mhm.
Um, So essentially what you're saying is run, like if you have a data set of like, say, let's say 10 blogs, because I work with text data. I feed this into ChatGPT, I get some sort of output, and then I have to feed the same 10 blogs in another LLM to see what comes out of that one, right? Okay.
Yeah, and maybe there's some, essentially some kind of LLM audit methods that people have developed in nowadays. Actually, in computer science, I've seen some of these, right? So the other thing we can also do is some evaluation metric, which is basically we can do, maybe you can have some expert read and give some feedback, and then you have LLM generated text, and you can employ this as more rigorously for a sample of scores, and you can do a vector similarity or any other measure by how close is this expert with the LLM.
Yeah, so that we can do. As qualitative researchers, we can maybe code the same data and see if what we get it overlaps or not.
Yes, exactly. So there are methods in every field to assess reliability, right? Like inter-rater reliability, kappa score is one thing that health sciences people will accept. So if you have NIH, you want to get funded, then you need to include some of those kind of reliability,
for sure.
right? But
And the
there are
second question was relates to your methods, which were very impressive across different studies. And I'm not sure I followed all the nitty-picky, all the little details of it. But the big question is, a lot of that operationalization was custom made, or it's available on Google Cloud, for instance, because at some point you mentioned Google Video Intelligence, and I was wondering, what does that do?
We use Google Video Intelligence to extract, we put our videos through it and created features. And then we built our method on top of that. So the Google Cloud, I think our method is fairly, we have spent a lot of effort and energy, and very, very details are there. Is this necessary to do all of these to be publishable? I won't think there probably could be other ways of doing the same thing. The Google Cloud vision was kind of a high fixed cost, but we just did it. Now we're using it for a lot of studies. It takes the video and then kind of parses the text, parses the videos into frame level, gives us a lot more features that we can use to build our classifiers, right?
Okay, so it's a way to decompose the data.
Yes, because you have a video. What do you do with that video, right? The video is also a narrative. There is audio, there is frames, images. So I have to extract all that. We used Google Cloud and Vision API.
All right, super. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, but I would suggest that, I think for LLMs definitely have a lot of promise for us in today's world, especially at that intersection of qualitative and quantitative methods. So yeah, I am definitely very optimistic about their potential.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think Jonathan's hand. Yes, sorry. Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Maha, thanks for having, opening up to people outside your school. And it's a nice opportunity for me to hear such interesting work. And thanks, Anjana, for your presentation. Although, all these methods scare me, but I'm mostly, I'm a pragmatist and trying to see how to solve problems. And I do work in the digital health domain and trying to answer questions, both using quantitative and qualitative methods. As you were speaking about your motivation for the study, you did mention that self-care becomes important, and that's one of the reasons you are looking at how videos and how people use these videos to how the information that we translate in this video would become essential for the health purposes. But then you also said that you're looking at the understandability. But from the definition point of view, I would imagine that you would have used users, right? As your gold standard as opposed to doctors. And that was one question. And the other question I had is your initial sample came from USA, and you said you classified based
no.
No,
You need
YouTube.
yeah.
Yeah, because I thought that every country had its own content moderation, and then they
No.
would have your top 20, 200 videos of, if I type diabetes, self-care, or anything of that sort, the top
Mhm.
200 that I would come up, I'm in France, it would be different from what, a user would see in US, is what I imagined.
No, it's content moderation is not that fine grained. So, in fact,
Okay.
we had to exclude some of our top terms. We'll get something in Hindi, and we actually excluded things that are not in English language for our purpose because we need to have methods to annotate that content and so on. So, it's definitely not, these are worldwide platforms. And in fact, interestingly enough, a very small pilot study that we did, just assessing. Initially, YouTube came up with a method to, like, they were putting these labels saying this video is from a accredited health provider, and we tried to audit that, and it missed actually things in the UK. A health organization based in the UK is not even considered accredited health organization. They must have got some intern, and that person went and got all the list in the US and maybe put that. So it's, there was like some fascinating stories on content moderation that can be a side what I learned from doing this research. But I think you guys raise a very good question on this user study. I faced this from many times when I've given this talk. That's what we would like to do in future. One thing we wanted to do, well, again, I think I need to get more funding, then I'll do more stuff, but that's a simple answer. I would like to do more. And there's actually this, protocol called Think Aloud, which is kind of used in qualitative research as well. Herb Simon was one of the pioneers. We would like to do a Think Aloud protocol as well. So all the plant things, stuff, laundry list of things I would like to do with the study.
Um,
Going
uh,
in the
I just had another question. I mean, when we look at this is in terms of publication, where we try to integrate both qualitative and quantitative
Mhm.
techniques in it. I mean, it is nice to have a paper with just one story where, assuming you want to present a new algorithm, it goes
Mhm.
very well. But if you're trying to do algorithm versus also build a theory in the same paper, then it
Yeah.
becomes like nobody understands and it goes to different reviewers and everyone's asking for the top, like you said, the BERT model or whatever model that is the standard
Yeah.
at that moment of review.
Yes.
But we might have done a study like 4 years before or something. So, so that
Yes.
I was wondering, to what extent do you think it's even appropriate for reviewers to be asking for like the standardized thing, and
Yeah.
when that is not the objective of the study?
It's a very good question. I'm totally with you on this. It's not necessary to do whatever is considered because that is not the purpose of what you are trying to accomplish. And, this is a hard problem we run into in our field because we have people from diverse methods. And, sometimes a person who is coming from computer science background looks at things a certain way. That I think requires some maturity among everyone, the AEs, the senior editors handling papers, and to understand what is the synthesis, where is the contribution of this paper. But yeah, I do agree that you don't necessarily need BERT if that is not the purpose of what you're trying to do. At the same time, though, I would caution that I would not put a blanket like you should do this, you should do that, right? Because maybe you're trying to extract some, you're using topic model. A newer method will actually give better topic distribution. So it really, I would say, depends on that context, right? And this is challenge that I myself face as editor in like handling papers or that sort of a thing. It depends on what the method is giving you. If you are putting in all this work, do compare other methods because the way that the this technical things are evolving so fast. That's one huge problem. So in the videos, if you're doing any video type of studies, there used to be some benchmarks called video BERT. That's already old method now. So if you try to go to some GitHub, you won't find many video BERT. You will find something newer. So as researchers, we have to shake our heads and say, like, what is even going on? The benchmark is old. Whatever was the benchmark 5 months ago is already old now. So, where is it all moving, right? Like I think there's so many. I cannot give one simple answer to all, but just say that yes, sometimes using the latest method is not really necessary. But having said that, though, some other situations, if you're spending so much time and effort and investing and doing a lot of work, and there is kind of a superior method that will do something for much and give more meaning, then that's also both are challenges, right? I
Yeah,
I don't.
it's just that if your method is sequential and then you ended up doing many other things based on your
Yeah,
first one, and then you have to now change the first one, that becomes a bit tricky,
it is
especially for like those who are not adept at using these tools
yeah, I do
and
agree with
who do not know the standards that well.
I do agree with that. I think then at least we need to have some way of we assess the paper and we have to acknowledge, by the way, that every method now with the technical advances being what they are, everything is old, right? Like whatever I did with biolistium 5 years ago is already outdated, right? Like so I do understand that part very well. Like I said, my benchmarks are constantly moving. If I have to compare my method against alternate methods, what is the alternate method? That itself is changing every like 2 months or right. So
Exactly.
I do understand what you're saying.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
It does put pressure on us as researchers studying information technology because we are in a very rapidly moving area.
Thank you. I mean, if there are no other questions, I'm just going to pause for a few seconds to see if there are. Other than that, I would really love to thank Anjana for an amazing talk. It was so informative. I learned a lot. And I think like many of the audience members, I was completely bedazzled by how many different methods you've used, how rigorous your work is. I mean, seriously, it's absolutely impressive. So thank you so much. And I want to thank the audience as well for attending.